What's up, guys? My name is Nathan, and welcome to Hail. This is the fourth episode of my Decade in Review series. In this episode, we'll be talking about my top 10 favorite movies from the year 2013. I'm sorry that it's taken so long for me to get this video released. I've been very busy working for EFY. I'm actually wearing my shirt right now. That was an awesome experience to work for EFY. It stands for Especially for Youth. It's a church camp. I talked about it a little bit in a past video, but if you want to know more about it, just message me or ask me on social media, and I'd love to tell you more about it. But today we're here to talk about movies. So let me tell you something. I watched a total of 9 new movies for this list, and those movies include The Place Beyond the Pines, Nebraska, Short Term 12, The Past, The Wind Rises, 12 Years a Slave, The Hunt, Blue Jasmine, and Inside Llewyn Davis. And so before I talk about these movies more in depth, I just want to give a few disclosures as I do with every video. Any R-rated movie that you see on this list, I watched filtered either through VidAngel or through ClearPlay or through TV. It's just the way I prefer to watch movies. Also in list pasts, I don't know if that's the correct way of saying that. Also in past episodes for this series, I did not include an honorable mention list, but there are so many good movies that I saw in 2013 that I feel almost necessary to include an honorable mention list. These are movies that I really enjoyed, but they did not make the top 10, unfortunately. And those movies include Nebraska, Man of Steel, Frozen, Blue Jasmine, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, Prisoners, and Fruitvale Station. I was really sad Fruitvale Station got kicked out because I really like that movie. But it just goes to show how great the year 2013 was for film. So enough of my chit chat, let's get started with the list. Starting out at number 10, we've got Short Term 12. I love this movie so much because it's just so realistic. Basically, the movie follows Brie Larson and her boyfriend. They run a foster care service for underprivileged children. And one of the girls that's entered in reminds Brie Larson of herself when she was her age. Brie Larson gave an amazing performance. And this is the second movie I've seen with her where she's really playing a serious role, the other being Room. I've seen her in other films such as Captain Marvel and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and how could we forget Hoot? But I feel like Room and Short Term 12, those are the movies that really show her potential in acting. Rami Malek is also in the movie, and he plays a complete idiot, but I really like that for some reason. Something else I really liked about this movie is the writing in it. It was just very clever writing. Like there's a scene where Brie Larson, she's talking about how her mom had a lot of boyfriends and she used to draw portraits of every boyfriend that her mom had. And then she would sell the paintings to her mom for $10 each. And the girl that she's talking to asks, well, how much money did you make? And she replies, I don't know, but enough money to buy a portable CD player with anti-shockware. Which to me, I don't know, it's just clever writing. Because instead of an opportunity for her to say, oh, I made 50, 60 bucks, she says that specific of an answer. It stood out to me. But the real message of this movie is fighting the past and coming to terms with the past. The movie is just realistic, it's funny, it's dramatic, and I really enjoyed it. The Hunt was one of the most frustrating movies I have ever seen. An innocent man who works at a kindergarten school is accused of something that he did not do. But long story short, the accusation spreads and the whole town turns against him. This movie was very frustrating because you know the truth, but the whole town doesn't. And so you watched Mads Mikkelsen's character go through so much torment and through so much grief, and you also see the true character of a lot of the townsfolk. People that were once his best friend are now against him, and you can't 100% blame them because if your friend was in this position, it'd be hard to justify his actions. This movie was very frustrating, but I really enjoyed it as well. Coming in at number 8, we've got Saving Mr. Banks. There were a lot of things that I really enjoyed about this movie. It's not a movie that I can watch a lot. In fact, I've only seen it twice. I saw it in the theaters and then I rewatched it again a few months ago. But the things that I love about this movie, Julia Thompson's performance as P.L. Travers. You see her past and the inspiration behind creating the story of Mary Poppins. And I do really enjoy the Disney movie Mary Poppins. And so seeing the background and the origins of the different characters from the movie Mary Poppins was very neat to me. And also Tom Hanks, he did great as Walt Disney. He portrayed a Walt Disney that I would just expect Walt Disney to be like. I don't know too much about Walt Disney. I mean, I've watched a documentary, but basically Tom Hanks' performance as Walt Disney was very convincing to me. Tom Hanks, man, this was his year. At number 7, I've got The Place Beyond the Pines. This was the final movie that I watched before wrapping up this year and making this video. And so it is fresh in my mind, and wow, this movie was insane. The way the movie is formatted, it actually feels like it's several films put into one. I don't want to go too much into details, but let me just say, by the time the movie ended, I felt like it was a completely different movie from the one that I started. This movie really tugs at your heartstrings in a way where you're sad in several different ways, where you're frustrated sad, or you're sad because you feel bad for a character, or you're sad because you want something to go another way, or you're sad because you know something that another character doesn't know. It was a trip, and I loved Place Beyond the Pines. As I mentioned earlier, I do watch R-rated films filtered, and this movie frustrated me a little bit with its excessive language. That bothers me personally. I know it doesn't bother everyone, but even watching it filtered, I noticed that there were several scenes where it was just completely muted out, and it was hard for me to pick up on the storyline. I had to kind of piece together what was happening because they were using so much language that I couldn't even hear the dialogue. And so for those who are like me and they're not a huge fan of vulgar language, you probably won't like this movie. I recommend watching it filtered, but even at that, it may be a little hard to follow in some scenes. And so if I could change one thing about this movie, I just wish that there was less language in it. Everything else was just amazing. Monsters University, I feel like, is one of Pixar's most controversial films. I personally love the movie Monsters, Inc., and so when I found out that Monsters University was happening, of course I was on board. And when I saw the movie, I'll admit that it's not as good as Monsters, Inc., but I still loved the story that we got. You get a great background story of Mike and Sully with a very emotional ending as well, and a perfect lead-in into Monsters, Inc. There are a few things that I definitely think are a little childish in this movie. Like, for an example, in the scare games when Randall is beaten, he looks at Sully and he's like, "That's the last time I'll let Sully beat me," or something like that. And you know that line was just thrown in there to have a good lead-in into Monsters, Inc. If it's like an Easter egg that leads into Monsters, Inc., that's great. But when they're just milking that, hey, this is a prequel to Monsters, Inc., and you should be excited. I don't know. I don't really like when movies throw it in your face. I like when it's more just subtle evidence that this is a prequel and Monsters, Inc. is happening afterwards. At number 5, I have 12 Years a Slave. Although this isn't my number 1 movie of the year, I definitely consider this the best movie of the year. I haven't seen too many films on slavery, but of the ones I have seen, this one definitely takes the top spot. It was emotional, it was unfair, it was hard to watch, and it was crazy to think that this is our history. The performances in this movie were great, notably Chiwetel Ejiofor, Michael Fassbender, and Lupita Nyong'o. Now, the reason this movie isn't higher on my list is because I think it's on the same scale as Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List, where the movie is practically perfect, but because of the content that is within the movie, it is very hard to rewatch. I don't see myself watching it again anytime soon, but I am grateful that I saw it. Catching Fire is a movie that made this list literally just because of my personal love for it. I mean, it is my list, right? And before you're so quick to assume that it's just another young adult film, I'll have you know that it got amazing reviews from the critics, receiving an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 76 on Metacritic, which is a higher score than Inception received. And if you think that I'm only sharing these critic scores to just prove to you how good the movie is, well then you're exactly right, because that's what I'm doing. It was a needed improvement on the first Hunger Games film. The first Hunger Games film was not bad by any means, but Catching Fire just improved it in every sense of the word. It was a better adaptation of the book to movie. There were better performances, the arena was better, the story was arguably better. I just really enjoyed what I saw. And it's a film that even to this day, I can watch it and enjoy it as much as I did when I was in high school. At number 3, I have Gravity. Gravity is a roller coaster, let me tell you that. It's a movie that from the start, you are just hooked. And it's got the signature long shots from Alfonso Cuarón that I watch the movie and I wonder, how did they make this film? It is just an incredible achievement and it deserved all the awards that it received. Gravity is a movie that I can watch and I'm not bored in it. I can watch it. It's only about an hour and a half long, but that entire hour and a half, I am hooked. And if you guys think Sandra Bullock had it hard, just think about how hard it must have been for the cameraman. I mean, I hope he got a good paycheck. Inside Llewyn Davis was a film I watched for the first time for this list. It had been on my watch list for a long time, and making this list was a perfect excuse to finally watch it. This movie, it blew me away. And I can't really pinpoint just one reason of why I loved it so much. It's just a collection of several things I loved about it. I loved the folk music in it. Oscar Isaac's voice is absolutely incredible. I did not know he could sing, but when I watched this movie, I was very impressed, and you better believe I added this soundtrack to my playlist. I also loved just watching the journey of Llewyn Davis. There's a lot of symbolism to this movie as well. I've watched several YouTube videos and I've read articles just discussing what what this means and what that means in the film. There's a lot of things up to the audience's interpretation, including the cat. What does the cat mean? If nothing else, I just like the cat. Oscar Isaac is the definition of indifferent for me. He's literally just, I don't love him. I don't dislike him though at all. He's just there. When he's in a movie, I watch it and that's fine. He's there. It's good. But this movie, I'm not gonna lie, it made me like him a little bit more. And it's a movie that I know that I will watch several more times in the years to come. And coming in at number 1 is Captain Phillips. This is a movie that I had seen long before making this video, and when I looked at my list, I saw it was ranked at like number 6, number 5, and I was like, you know, it's due for a rewatch. I haven't seen it in a few years. So I rewatched it, and I was absolutely blown away. I forgot how much I love this movie. I've seen a handful of Tom Hanks films, and this is my favorite performance from him. And I would even argue that it is one of his best performances. When the pirates first board the ship, just watching his frantic face as you can tell that he's piecing things together, that he's thinking things through. He's amazing at it. And then throughout the movie, I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it. I mean, it's based off a true story, so you should know what happens. But throughout the movie, the way that he portrays a character in shock and a character that is in a high stress situation, it's amazing. It is magnificent. And the performance was so good that it moved me to tears. By the final scene, I got teary-eyed and I was crying for Tom Hanks. Barkhad Abdi was amazing in this movie as well. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. He didn't win, but he definitely deserved the nomination, especially for his first acting credit. Phenomenal. Tom Hanks was seriously snubbed. He didn't even need to win, but he definitely deserved at least a nomination. He gave a career-defining performance in this film. This movie is amazing. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. If you have seen it, watch it again to remind yourself of how good it is. So there it is. There's my list. If you want to see my complete list, I will leave a link to that in the description below. Now let's look at the year in review. If I were to describe this year, I would call it the year of the performances. As I watched the movies for this year, I just kept thinking to myself, man, it's such a good performance. And it happened again and again with each new movie I watched. I saw a total of 43 movies this year. There were 5 movies that I gave a 10 out of 10 to, which were my top 5 movies of the year. And there were actually no movies that I gave a 1 out of 10 to, but I did give one movie a 2 out of 10, and that went to The Lone Ranger, because that movie was awful. The average rating for the year 2013 for me was a 7.35 out of 10. Make sure to leave your rankings of the year 2013 in the comments below. And remember to respect other people's opinions, please. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you later.